We've just finished talking about how to teach level 1. Let's go right into how to teach level 2. And I'm using Unit 13 as a sample. So, again, you have a teacher's guide and you have a class guide. The teacher's guide is what you should be using during your prep time, and the class guide is for the classroom. Let's talk about the warm-up. The warm-up is different this time for level 2. It's called the noun warmer. You should spend about 3 to 5 minutes, but no more than 5 minutes on this activity. So this activity, you're going to pick a topic or a category from either people, places, things, or animals. Some suggestions are given in the teacher's guide, and you can do this activity in 2 ways. First, students list as many nouns as they can within the topic or category, allowing each student to add to the list before beginning the class. And the second way you could do this warm-up is, again, choose a topic or category before class and then have the students talk about it. Some suggestions are best friends, people in the family, etc. So then it's a little more narrowed list that the students can create. And then, if the students say an adjective or a verb, this is a chance to say, well, is it a person, place, thing, or animal? And let the students think about it. And if it's no, then you ask, is it a noun? No. Don't focus on teaching them what an adjective is or what a verb is. Just focus on them kind of familiarizing themselves with the word noun and what is a noun. Then, just like in level 1, day 1, on day 1, level 2, you're going to introduce this new material. This is where they're going to learn the sight sentences for the unit. Again, we're using games and activities to help them with this. And, like I've said before, if an activity is finished too quickly, have that backup or a way to change the activity so it takes up that class time. Again, there's going to be more activities when you're introducing this new material so the students get a real firm grasp of these sight sentences. And then wrap up. Wrap up is exactly the same as it was with level 1. Of course, we don't have a song or a video for this, but you can, again, take that time to touch base with each of the kids to see if they understood the sight sentences of the unit. Now, day 2. We're going to begin with our storytelling component of the level 2 program. Now let's go into day 2. Again, you're going to do the noun warm up, and then the wrap up is just the same like I've explained before. Now, what a big component of this class is the storytelling part. Again, you're going to be doing a picture walk. What's different is that there's no text in the storybook, so the students don't know where the sight sentences are going to be used in this story. So I want you to go through the pictures, and I have a whole list of questions that you can use during this storytelling time. Now, the picture walk should take between 10 and 15 minutes because I really want you to go through these lists of questions that I have for you on each of the pages and have the students try and guess what the sight sentences are going to be. They're mostly going to need to know those sight sentences that they learned on day 1 to use during this time. Then a speaking practice, just like the other speaking practices we've talked about. They're playing games and they're learning to use the language and be comfortable with doing a question and answer approach with their speaking. I don't think I need to say it again, but I will one more time, is if the activity finishes too quickly, make sure you have a backup or a way to change the activity to make it go for the full class time. Now, day 3. With the storytelling part of day 3, what you're going to do is you're going to focus on the characters of the story. Again, going through that storybook without any text in it whatsoever and pointing out the people and the animals in it, and see if the class can maybe come up with a name for the character. Talk about what the characters do in the story, to help develop their speaking. Encourage the students to describe the characters, such as their hair, their eye color, what are they wearing, simple things like that, just so they can like learn to develop a character themselves. And then, you know, as a little activity that you could do with this is so the students really understand what is a character. Have them list characters that they already know. You know, it could be characters from books, it can be characters from movies, TV, whatever it is, and have them list those characters and describe those characters. Then again, speaking practice, just like I've said before. I'm not going to go into it too much since it's just like I've explained many times before. Now let's go into day 4. We're going to talk about setting during the storytelling part of this class. And just like you did in day 3 with the characters, you're going to go through the book and you're going to be pointing out the places that are happening in the storybook. Talk about, you know, how a place in a storybook is called the setting, and just see if the students can make that quick little connection. Setting equals place in the story. Then also see if the students can see what other settings that they already know of places in storybooks or movies that they've already familiar with, and see if they can recall where those stories take place. And then again, day 4 has a speaking practice. And like I've said before, if it finishes too quickly, play it again or have a backup activity. Also, I'm just going to take a moment right now and say again that the warm-up and the wrap-up are exactly the same as it was in day 1, and it will be exactly the same through all of these days. So I'm just taking a moment to touch on that one more time, but I'm not going to bring it up again. Now, day 5. Day 5, we're going to do a role play. And what you're going to do is you're going to pick a page from the storybook and have the students act out what they think happens on this page of the storybook. You can put them in groups, or you can have 1 or 2 volunteers come up and do it themselves. Remind them that not to be robotic, like you want them to be using those sight sentences in a fun, animated way. And when they're looking at the picture, you want them to maybe copy any poses or anything like that during it. And then again, for about 15-20 minutes of the class period during this day, playing a speaking practice with them. Now we're going to talk about day 6. Day 6 of level 2 is a pretty important day because during the reading practices, the storybook is now going to have text in the story. And the teacher should read the text of the story to the class. Again, be your best storytelling self. If you don't know how to be a better storyteller, I have attached videos to the teacher's guide so you can see how to develop those techniques. And as you're reading through this story, stop and compare it to the story that the students kind of created themselves during day 1 through day 5. See if they were able to guess some of the sight sentences that are used in the storybook. Also, make a point of talking about the problem in the story. The students probably haven't picked up on the problem in the story during the earlier days, but point out the problems in the story. So for instance, during this story, Dessert Time, the little girl in the story really, really wants to eat dessert, but she knows she can't have dessert till 7 o'clock. And so the problem is she just has to keep waiting and waiting and waiting. So see if the students can maybe figure out that problem themselves. Then, after you've done all that, choral read with the story. We've talked about choral reading before, so I'm not going to go into it. Then, for the second part of day 6, you're going to do some more role playing, just like they've done through Unit 1. I'm sorry, not Unit 1, Level 1. And you're going to have them review the sight sentences, throw in those flashcards for them to come up with different sentences, split them into groups, give them some time to practice. You should be floating around, making sure they're doing it correctly, and then have them get up there and perform. And of course, always record that performance. This is a way for you to track progress and a thing you can send to the parents so they see what their kids are doing during the class period. Now, day 7, reading practice. Again, we're going to have a teacher reading, and again, best storyteller self. Another thing you need to talk about during this day is the solution to the problem that you talked about during day 6. So for instance, in our story, we have a little girl who can't wait for dessert, but she can't have dessert until 7 o'clock. So what does she do? She has to wait patiently. That's the solution to the problem. She just needs to wait. After you've gone through that part of the reading practices, again, choral read with the kids. And for the speaking practices, we're doing a role play again. You're going to put them in different groups than they were in on day 6. They're going to kind of create a character this time to perform the role play. And, give them a chance to pick out a setting. Don't limit them to any kind of setting. If they want to do it in space, they do it in space. If they want to do it under the water, they do it under the water. If they can't come up with a setting themselves, give them ideas so they can be creative with this. This is a great time for the kids to be stimulated and be creative instead of just following a set number of things. Let them also use the vocab that they've learned during this time. Use those flashcards. A key component of the Reading Great program is that the vocab chosen for these sight sentences can be used with more than just one sight sentence. So, you should always have a huge stack of those flashcards with you during each class so the kids have the freedom to choose any flashcard that goes with a sight sentence. After they're put in their groups, they figured out what their character is, the setting, their words that they're going to use to finish those sight sentences. Give them some time to practice. You should be floating around, seeing what they're doing, making sure they're doing it correctly. Then, before the end of the class period, let them perform and recording again. Day 8. Let's talk about day 8. We're going to do tennis reading on this day. Tennis reading is very similar to split reading, just with a new name. You're going to split the class into 2 groups. Groups will each read a sentence, going back and forth for each sentence. Switch up who reads first so the class can get a chance to read all the sentences of the story. So try and read the story 2 or 3 times during this day. And always checking to make sure the students are having a good pace, a good intonation. You don't want them to be little robots with their reading. Then, game time, speaking practice. Just like I've explained throughout level 1 and parts of level 2, they're going to be playing a game. Have that game ready for them to play, and you're going to need the flashcards probably. I don't think I need to say it again, but you know what I would say at this moment. Now, like I told you earlier during level 1, day 9 through 12 are the most important days of a Reading Great unit. Starting with day 9, you're going to start with your reading practice with 1 word at a time. Line the students up next to each other. And so the students can see the story. They can either be standing or sitting. I encourage standing because then they're a little more focused since they might have been sitting for a while at this point. Then the students are going to read 1 word at a time. To keep the students motivated, if a student misses a word, you can go back to the beginning of the story and start the story over again. This way, they kind of have to pay attention during this time so they don't miss their word. You should maybe be pointing to each of the words so the students don't lose their place. You know, you don't want them to just constantly making a mistake and having to go back to the beginning of the story. Point to the words as they're reading it. Then, day 9, we're going to begin the storytelling part of level 2, which is its main focus on their speaking. What you're going to do is you're going to sit in a circle with the students and choose a picture prompt, which I have prepared. And you're going to use this picture prompt from day 9 to day 12. After choosing that picture prompt, have the students create characters for the story that they're going to be working on over the next few days. A fun thing to do that with the kids that you could do is give them each a piece of paper and have them draw the characters. You could start with something pretty basic, boy, girl, monster, some kind of animal, and then each student can kind of add something from hair color to my character has wings or my character has a tail. You know, encourage the students to be creative. They might struggle with this, but really try and push them to use their imagination. And even if maybe they don't know the word in English, if they can draw it, let them draw it. And then, you know, save these characters for the next few classes and things like that. But that's what you're going to be focusing on this day, is the characters that they're going to use to go with that picture prompt that they chose earlier in the day. Now, day 10, just like in level 1, we're going to have independent readers. So this one student is going to get up and read the entire story to the class. Like I said earlier, if a student is too shy, pair them up or have them read with you, whatever you think the student might be comfortable with. And also to change it up so it's not like it was in level 1, treat independent reading as a game. See who can read it the fastest with the fewest mistakes, who can act out the story the best, who can read the story with the loudest or quietest voice, and who can read the story with the silliest voice. Little things like that. So it's not like they did in level 1. It's a little more fun, a little more interactive, and always a little more creative. Then we're going to go into day 2 of the storytelling part of it. Again, using the same picture prompt from day 9. It's now time for the students to create the setting. Now that picture prompt will probably be a setting, and you can see if the students can kind of maybe figure out where that setting can be, whether it's in the ocean, in the school, in outer space, but try and see if they can make a connection to a place with that picture prompt. You know, just be a little bit flexible with this part of it. If the students want to choose more than one setting, let them do that, but maybe limit it to about 3. Again, you can give the students some paper and let them draw out this setting. You know, you could begin the drawing by choosing the setting and then maybe change up some things, like the trees are purple, the sky is green, the grass is blue. Like, let the students have fun with this and be silly with it. Now we're going to talk about day 11. Just like day 10, we have independent reading. You should follow the same advice that I gave you when I talked about day 10. Let's talk about the storytelling part of this class for day 11. Now is the time to bring the characters and the setting that the students have created to life. In order to have a story, you need to have a problem for that story. And so as a class, create a problem for their characters that they've worked on during day 9 and their setting during day 10, and how they're gonna act out that problem. You can have the students maybe come up with more than one problem and then choose the best one, the most popular one among the class. Try and have the problems be real life situations that they might run into, such as being late to school but they can't find their backpack, Missing a pencil. It's time to write, but they're missing their pencil. What do they do? And then, depending on the level of your students and their creative level, you could do something silly that like a giraffe that doesn't have stripes or has stripes but not spots. And what kind of problem would that create for a giraffe with stripes and not spots? A good thing to do so the students are really comprehending this problem is have them act out the problem. So if it's time to write something but they can't find a pencil, how would they act in that situation? And just that way they have a better understanding of it. After you've come up with that problem, you need to come up with a solution to that problem. Repeat the same practices as coming up with the problem when you're coming up with the solution. And see if maybe they can come up with a really fun and interesting solution to the problem that you've chosen. Now, let's talk about the last day, day 12, of Reading Great Level 2. Again, independent reading, just like I explained on day 10. Day 12 is called oral storytelling. This activity is going to be a combination of role play and oral storytelling. You're going to review the characters that the students have created, the setting, the problem, and the solutions. Then you're going to look for student volunteers to act out what they've created. And when they're up there acting that out, they're using those sight sentences of the unit to create the dialogue for the story. If you need a narrator, then the teacher should be acting as the narrator. And you can explain things that are happening, such as if they're walking through a forest, or if they're jumping on the moon, they're swimming in the ocean, things like that. Filming is very important on this day. I do think that on day 9, 10, and 11, when you're having those creative brainstorming session with the kids, you should be recording that as well, because during those times, the kids should be using the sight sentences when they're talking and things like that. But when they're up there and performing, you definitely should be filming that. And then if there's time, then have a new group of student volunteers go up there and act out the story.